All right, happy Mother's Day, everybody. You're listening to a special edition of the Mo News podcast, celebrating all of our mothers out there. I'm Mosh
And I'm
Oinounou.
Jill Wagner. Mosh, we've got a big show in store. To start, what better way to celebrate Mother's Day than by interviewing our moms? So coming up, we've got Mosh's mom, Debby, and my mom, Carol. We're going to be talking about how motherhood's changed over the years and stayed the same, what kinds of lessons they learned from their moms, and they'll just be imparting their words of motherly wisdom.
So I have to say, Jill, this is probably one of the interviews I've been more nervous about.
Really?
Well, maybe nervous is the wrong word, excited, but also just like it's harder to prep for your own mother than, say, politicians or journalists, etc., the other types of people we have on. I hope everyone who's listening is able to get something out of this. At the same time, I just want to say here at the outset how lucky I feel and recognize how fortunate I am to be able to do this. And I just want to send our love out there to everyone who either grew up without a mother, is not in touch with their mother, recently lost their mother, because I know this holiday in particular does bring up those feelings. And I want to say to everyone out there, we see you, we hear you, and we send our love to you.
Absolutely. But before we really get started, a little state of play on motherhood in America. So Mosh, I did a quick Google search while I was prepping for this podcast, and here are the first few items that come up literally in order. From the San Francisco Chronicle, journalist lays bare the many myths of motherhood in America. From The Guardian, a British paper, your stories about motherhood in America, quote, there are no social safety nets. From Time Magazine, America has been failing mothers for a long time. The pandemic made it clear what needs to happen. From The Washington Post, the unreasonable expectations of American motherhood. And then an essay in Salon, which asked what a lot of women have been asking themselves lately: is this the worst time in American history to be a mom? So I think we get the point here. Mothers have had a rough go recently, and that is partly why we wanted to do this podcast, to figure out what is going on and to just celebrate motherhood, which I think in a lot of ways gets a bad rap. At least in my experience, it is so incredibly hard, but it's also the best thing ever.
So part of what's factoring in the mood right now, obviously, we just lived through it, was the pandemic, which created or at least exposed the childcare crisis. It forced a lot of women, particularly moms, out of the workforce so they could take care of their kids, remote learning, all of that. Then on top of that, Jill, we've talked a lot on this podcast about the baby formula shortage, the tampon shortage, the shortage of, baby Tylenol, basically everything that is out
coming.
there that the hits get, like the Adderall shortage, etc. All the various shortages out there that moms have been dealing with. And they haven't gotten much help from Washington, at least so far, to help deal with any of that.
Mosh, in that article I mentioned above in Salon, they spoke to Dr. Harvey Karp. He's a really well-known pediatrician and founder and CEO of Happiest Baby, also the creator of The Snoo, if you know, you know. In describing motherhood today, he said it is like Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. On the one hand, you've got medical advances that are saving more children's lives, hunger in America less than it was in earlier eras. So just objectively, things have been worse. But there are still some very serious concerns underneath, things like anxiety in children, depression among young mothers. And he says one of the biggest issues that factors into this is the loss of extended families. He says parents have this terrible misconception today, and mothers especially, that they're supposed to be everything, do everything, and provide everything for their babies, that's what a good mother does. But a good mother, he says, always had a network. And as a matter of fact, when you had a baby, you were babied as much as you were babying the baby. Other cultures treat that fourth trimester totally differently than we do here in the United States. But Mosh, it's just back to that expression, it takes a village. It really does. And it's a village that a lot of families simply don't have anymore.
Yeah, in many Eastern cultures, the families all live next to each other. They're a couple miles away. You might have grandma in the house. You might have aunts and uncles in the house, etc. It's definitely a different situation here in America. With all of that set up, though, Jill, let's get to our special guest.
Our OG village, right? Our moms.
our village, and very thankful to continue to have them and have them on the podcast today for a special edition. I'll go first here, welcoming my mom, Debby, born and raised in the Chicago area. She is the mother of two, me and then my younger brother, Yoni. For many years, newly congratulate her on her retirement. She worked two jobs for, I don't know, going on 40 years, Mom. She co-ran the family business, our family cabinet shop. My dad did the cabinets. My mom ran the front office. Then she also worked at a hospital in the Chicago area. For those of you listening there, you might be familiar with Lutheran General Hospital, where she was there for several decades. She is, of course, a mom to me and my brother. She's a grandmother of three, thanks to my brother, though I hope to be able to help to add to that in the future. And Debby joins us from Fort Worth, Texas, where my parents are newly moved in, newly retired. Hi, Mom.
Hey, everyone. Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And good to meet Carol and see Jill again.
And before we get started, I want to introduce my mom, Carol, who grew up in Far Rockaway, Queens, one of four kids, went to Albany and Queens College, and worked as an art teacher for nearly 40 years on Long Island. She raised me and my older brother, Scott, now a grandmother to four kids, and joins us straight from my childhood home on Long Island. Hi, Mom.
Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. And Jill actually is still my baby, and I'm very proud of her. I don't want to get but
All right, so I want to start with this question. What this holiday brings to mind now as grandmothers and as moms, now here talking on this podcast to your grown children. I'll begin with you, Carol. Mother's Day thoughts as we begin here.
Well, I've always thought of celebrating Mother's Day for my mother, and then for my daughter. I don't know if I'm being selfless or what, but I always felt it was very special, and it makes me appreciate my family, because I just think we're very fortunate to have each other, and I think as long as you have the love of a mother, that's going to make everything okay. Because especially as a teacher, I always saw that the children that didn't have that great, strong family unit, it really affected them a lot. And I just think that, Mother's Day to me is love, because I just think that as long as you have a lot of love for your children, your parents, your grandparents, I think it works both ways. And no matter what your situation is, and no matter what time you lived, whether it was 100 years ago or today, with things changing so rapidly, I think love is the main ingredient. Unconditional love for your children. And hopefully they feel that, and that's all you can do. And I think that's the most important ingredient to raising happy, healthy, productive kids.
Oh, she said everything that I was thinking. But I'll add, it feels Mother's Day is every day, and it's a day to be thankful. Mosh was born in May, so it was absolutely perfect that my first Mother's Day was celebrated with Mosh. And like Carol said, the first thought came to my mind was my own mother, not about myself. So Mother's Day to me is every day, to be grateful and thankful, and it's only getting better.
How has it changed, Mom, as a having a son now who's approaching 41 years old?
It doesn't make a difference. To me, you're still a kid, and I love you, but pride, it's always been that. I've always been so proud of you. Now it's going 40 years plus, but you make it very special. And like I said a few years ago at your wedding, you made this mom thing very easy.
It's funny that you guys both said that on Mother's Day, you don't think of yourself, you think of your own mothers. And I'm the same way because I'm a new mom. And for me, I don't ever think it's about me. I still think it's about my mom and my mother-in-law. And I just, it doesn't even sometimes even cross my mind that I'm a mom too. And like, this is my day also. But I just wanted to ask, because you both are mothers, you're both grandmothers. Was there any age or stage of being a parent or a grandparent that you enjoyed the most, and also perhaps that you found most challenging?
I would say for me, the most challenging thing about being a grandmother is trying not to impose my opinions and my thoughts about how my children should bring up their children.
Is there something
I'm
you want
happy
to
to give
tell me,
my
Mom?
I think I'm more open with you than I thought I would be, and I'm open with my son, like your brother Scott also. But I I feel like I need to hold back, and I also feel like it's challenging for me to see something that I would change, but I also feel on the other side of that that it's almost a relief that I don't have to feel like it's my decision on those hard things and hard choices that you have to make. If you ask for my advice, I'll give it to you. But ultimately, whatever decision you and Michael, your husband, wants to make about your children, it's your decision. I don't have to worry that I made the decision and it might be wrong or right, or like I did with you and Scott. As a grandmother, you can think about things that you might want to say, sometimes saying them, but you don't have to worry that you have to ultimately make that choice. So that's kind of a relief. But as far as the great things about being a grandmother, it's just indescribable joy. You can't. It's just such an emotional experience. I like I said before, it's all love, and as much love as I gave and felt for you and your brother, it's multiplied so much. I'm getting emotional now. So many times with your children, with my grandchildren. And I guess it's just something that's inborn. I don't really know the reason for it, but it's the ultimate joy being with
What's
them.
the expression? If you knew grandchildren were so fun, you'd have them first.
Exactly. It's indescribable.
Mom, something that struck me that you said recently is you were talking about the amount of patience that you have for your grandkids as you were reflecting on being a grandmother versus a mom.
Absolutely. I always tell people I would prefer to be grandma before I would have become a mom, because I think I would have been a better mom.
Explain that.
You just want time to stop, and you have an abundance of patience for these little guys, which I think they thrive on. As a mom, you think of all the things you have to do and the rushing all through your children's life is not important. It's the patience and the love and the repeat that little children love to do, and they do appreciate it. So that's probably why they climb on your laps and cuddle, because they know they can get away with a little bit more. Times are different. Parents are under pressure to do so many things. And today is no different than 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. We have, I think motherhood was always difficult. And with all the advantages, it's just becoming more, you want to do more, accomplish more. But kids thrive on just the love and patience, being watched, being waited on, and they'll do fine. I don't think you guys have anything to worry about in 2020. The internet is full of information. That's probably why you analyze and think, I should be doing this, I should be feeding them this, they should be going to these classes. On the other hand, fall back on your instincts and your kids will do all right. And that's what I try to do.
It's great advice.
No, I totally agree with that. I think there's a lot of pressure on parents today to just engage in so many different activities with their kids, and because of everything online, because of just the way life has evolved with kids not just going out and playing anymore, but having to be involved in organized activities. And exactly what you said, using your instincts, just go with your gut, as they say.
Right. This morning when Mosh had thrown me, he said, we're going to talk about the 80s versus 2020. What was the first thing I did? I ran to the internet. and they had information comparing 1980s to 2020, but it sounded as if the 1980s were the good old days, which were referred to in our time as the 50s.
Right.
You know, children playing outside, but the 50s were different than the 80s, but it's always a good time and it's always a rough time. So you just have to go with it.
I'm curious, with the advantage of time and seeing how technology has evolved, now there's live stream cameras, you can watch your baby sleep, and we have cell phones and we have the internet. Are there certain technologies that you see today and you look back and you're like, wow, I really wish I had this when I was raising you guys?
Well, I really wish I would have been able to close the door and be able to watch my baby sleeping, because I was always nervous, with the crib death and all the things that you worry about when babies are first born and when they're still in that crib. And I was always quietly opening the door, going in. I'd put my hand on their tummy or their chest to make sure that they were breathing and feel the air going up and down. And that's one thing I wish I was able to see, that thinking about that now, having experienced that so much with my
I still do that though, by the way. I still go in, even with the camera, if they haven't moved in a while, especially when they were really, really young. I'm like, I haven't seen movement in about 45 minutes, and I'll go in and I'll just put my hand and just say, make sure that the chest is going up and down. So I think that still happens.
Absolutely. That's mom's instinct. I think because we're moms, because we're women, we say and feel the same.
So I was curious because I'm a working mom, of course, and there's a lot of guilt that comes with that. Just the time that you're not necessarily with your kid, where you're away and either the dad is with them or a caregiver in some capacity. You were both working moms. Mosh and I turned out okay, I think. So I'm wondering, did you guys ever have that mom guilt being working moms back when we were younger?
Well, I mean, I was fortunate that I didn't work till you actually went to first grade, and of course, I was a teacher, so I worked pretty much the hours that you were in school. But of course, there were things at certain trips and things like that I wish I would have been able to go on when you were in school and I was working, although I did try to time things so that I could go on them and take my days when I needed to do things for you and for Scott. But I think being a working mother is a great example for your kids. I think you could do everything. And I think that even if I had worked those first few years when you were really little, I mean, one of the reasons that I didn't was because childcare was so expensive that when we figured it out, it didn't really pay to do it for me. But and we did make sacrifices by not having that extra income for those first few years. But I think that it's more the it may sound cliche, but it really is the quality of time that you spend with your children. As long as you give them the attention and, you do things with them, I think it doesn't matter if you're working or not. You're giving what you can in the love and in the attention and in the quality of the time that you spend with your children, whether you're working or not. And like I said, I think it's a great example because things were different. When I had you, we were sort of on that cusp of a lot of women staying home and not working, and those that did work. Things changed. Just like with my sister, who's 7 years older than me, very few women worked after they had kids. So when I had you, it was in the process of changing, and I think it's a good thing. I think it's such a great example because women can do everything today, and I hope that I was a good example for you of working and really having a productive and happy life. I mean, I loved what I did. I don't know if everybody loves their job, but I really did. And I think that was an important lesson also. You want to be able to do something that you really love with your life, and you can do that and also be a mother. Have your own profession, whatever it is you want to do. And I think that just adds to the quality of things that you're giving to your child.
I'm not hearing any guilt there.
Mom,
I don't feel guilty about it.
Good,
No,
you shouldn't.
There's a difference. Yeah.
Mom, I'm curious your answer to that question, and I'll preface this by telling everybody that we had a unique setup growing up. So my mom is managing the household. My mom and my dad have a business together, a cabinet shop that she's at 5 days a week. We had I think the good fortune of going to work with our parents, my brother and
Absolutely.
I. Like, we effectively would go with them and hang out at the cabinet shop and pick up odd jobs around the shop and go on delivery runs. If not, we'd go hang out with my mom in the office, etc. And then mom, starting at a relatively young age, you were also working weekends at the hospital.
Nights.
So would love, your response to that and your feeling around that, managing, raising the kids, but also your various professional commitments.
Right. Mom guilt here, I admit. And that's due to the fact I had less time to be with you guys. And there's lapses where I forget what was really going on in your lives. Mosh was wonderful. I worked at the cabinet shop. We brought the boys. They had lunch with their dad. They saw what we did, which I'm thankful for, because in the 80s and currently, they knew exactly where we were. They could picture us, and they were a part of our environment, the working environment. I began working evenings. Their dad stayed home with them on the weekend nights, which was good experience for them, as well as Charlie, their dad. But it was tiring for me. It wasn't exactly the situation I loved, but it was something I had to do. I knew I was helping them in another manner, bringing money in and insurance and necessities. If I would do it today, I don't think I would have worked on the weekends. I'd prefer to have been at home. But that's just me.
Yeah, well, that's why I feel like I was really lucky being a teacher, because I basically was working when they were in school. So I was just fortunate that was the profession that actually my mother encouraged me to go in.
It's great teaching.
Debbie, I totally can relate to what you just said, because I used to work really unorthodox hours where I anchored a morning show and I was in the office really, really early. So for 2, almost 3 years of my daughter's life, I was not around at all in the morning. So I didn't see her when she got up, and then when she started school, I wouldn't see her until almost 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I regret it. I loved my career at that point, but I really regret the time that I had missed there. And I've spoken to other women that I'm friendly with who are also in this profession, who also have anchored morning shows or are reporters for morning shows or work on morning shows. And a couple of them have said the same thing to me, where they've loved their career, but really now that when you step back from it a little bit, they've said they can't believe how much they missed. And it's hard. It's just, I think it adds to kind of what we go through, which is it's just not easy. You try to make decisions for yourself, for your family, but you can't be everywhere at once.
Right. Too much on our plates, and hindsight is what we're talking about. I was, as a new mother, a young mother, I was doing things that I felt were right. The boys were safe, they were loved, well fed, but looking back at it, I would have loved to have spent more time. Mosh was helpful. He used to leave me notes, especially when I was working late at night, and he would leave me these love notes, which I just came upon. I don't even remember reading them the first time, but he had shared what was going on in the afternoons with his brother Yoni, with Abba, and I appreciate it so much. And these are notes that I found recently, packing up to move from our home in Chicago. So
you kept a lot, Mom, as we were packing up.
I know, but you wrote such sweet notes, and because of that, I feel like I should have been home, or I regret not. I hope I acknowledged those notes. You know, those time moves so quickly.
Well, yeah,
as a mom.
I hate that you feel guilt, because I never felt neglected by you. I just want you to know that. Okay.
And I know when you went to college, and I'm sure when Jill went to college, I just tried to absorb every part of your life. And I think I have a better memory of the last 20 plus years than the first 20.
It's interesting, actually. So, Jill, I threw out questions on Instagram just before we began recording here, and started to get a few saying, we're interviewing our moms. What do you guys want to know? And so we've started to get some messages. There's a question from Sam Krasnick, who says, ask your moms, what was your favorite age of your kids and why? If you can pick a favorite time period or age, Carol, favorite age of young Jill or adult Jill?
Well, I think my favorite age was any time in elementary school because she was delicious and sweet, and always was delicious and sweet. But as she got to be more of a teenager, she did give me a very hard time.
I did.
Go on.
I did. I feel bad.
That's a girl.
Really did. And get ready, Jill, because your little Alex is she's Jill 2.0. So I mean, I was always super proud of everything she did, because she really, from the time she was in little one, I mean, till now, forever. But the age that I enjoyed the most, without the extra stress, was really when she was younger, because she didn't fight me. She spoke her own mind. It's hard for two adult women to live in the same house, and strong-minded, which I think is great, because I think that's what makes her what she is. So, but it was very stressful for me, because I had to watch everything that I
was not
said.
Easy.
And she would battle me on it. But I think when she was, I remember when she went to camp for the first time, she was only, I think, at the end of second grade. She wanted to go to camp because her brother was there, and she was just so delicious. And she's still delicious. But it was, and now I look at Alex and I see the same thing. She's just so sweet. But I think that was the age, because I could do her hair however I wanted. I could dress her however I wanted. As she got older, she just you know, she left me in the background. I'm going to do everything myself. I'm going to do this. I want to do this. And I let her make her own choices because she was very independent. And so I love the independence, but I also it's always a split thing with mothers. You want your kids to be independent, but you also want to pamper them and take care of them in a way that you're going to.
It's
dress
okay,
them,
Mom. You're allowed to
have
say
them-
that I was tough in high school and middle school as I got older. You don't have to qualify.
It's all
it.
downhill.
And she's still tough. Any question, she won't answer a question. The minute I ask her a question, why? She never answers the question. Why do you want to know?
Mom,
What does it matter?
I think the difference this morning is boys and girls. So I guess I'm thankful I have I have three grandchildren, two are little girls, so it's a whole new experience. But as far as my sons, the toddler stage, early first grade, second grade, third grade, I enjoyed watching. But I can tell you, if we're talking about Mosh and his brother, it's the current. I'm so proud and enjoying being a mom because I love seeing them as an adult. I think our relationships have evolved. So waiting to hear from them and knowing that they'll call and have wonderful conversations with them 24/7, I just am crazy about. Um, Last night I talked to my son from Chicago for almost an hour, and it was such a good feeling because I can wait for their calls. I don't need to call and say, why aren't you calling me? They come to me. And I guess that's the important part about being a mom, to give them distance, but the flexibility to say, hey, I can call my mom anytime and not to hesitate. And that was my wish about being a good mom, is being there when they needed me and knowing they can reach me at any time.
Yeah, that is the best feeling, knowing that they can always reach out to you, and you're still the one they call when there's a problem. My husband always laughs, and when my son calls, and he'll say, "Can you put Mom on?" We know it's something really something he needs my special advice, and it always makes me feel so
That's
good.
it. It's super. And then they reach out to us when it's good times. They just want to share. I see that especially with Mosh. All of a sudden, he and his wife are driving, and they just want to share the moment with me, and there's no better feeling.
I'll give a lot of credit to my wife, Alex, there. I actually think that she has, I probably, wasn't as communicative as I should have been, Mom, in college and through my 20s, etc. But now being married, I think Alex definitely makes a point being like, your mom would appreciate seeing this right now.
Right. She brought out those qualities that you didn't know you had, but beautiful qualities. But you've always had those qualities, but you were so busy.
You know what it is? Because my in-laws also have two boys, and the same way that you guys do. And when you have a daughter-in-law, I think it just is different because girls are just, I think, naturally maybe a little bit more sentimental and there's an expression. There's your son is your son till he has a wife, but your daughter is your daughter for life. And there's a little bit of truth to it. And I think
Absolutely.
if you have a good daughter-in-law, they hopefully include you in everything. And you do.
Right. And I'm blessed with two beautiful daughter-in-laws. And the boys were always teasing me as they were growing up. They said, you should have had a daughter. So now I have the two daughter-in-laws, and I love them.
I was always saying, we were waiting for the third child at some point.
Yeah.
No, but it is very true. It's boys and girls have it's a different experience. It really is. and it's beautiful no matter what. So it's great. You have two sons, so then you gain two daughters as your daughter-in-laws, and you appreciate them in a totally different way. And I'm lucky because my daughter-in-law is also so thoughtful and always is the one that includes me with everything. And I know it's her influence that I get as many FaceTimes and phone calls on the car rides with the FaceTimes with the kids, and it's beautiful. And I think that I attribute it to it. It's what I said at the beginning. It all comes down to love. I think if you give that unconditional love to your kids, which to me, and I'm sure to you, it just comes naturally. They feel that, and they return it,
Right.
and then they do that to their kids.
What you give, you get back in even a bigger way.
I have a number of questions here. I actually think this is a great one from Jess, which asks, I'll direct this one first to Debbie. Are you ready, Debbie? What did you worry about for your kids that turned out to be okay or better than you imagined? As you were raising us, were there things you were worried about and then it turned out to be totally okay? It might have been something temporary while we were kids or something later. Were there things that you were thinking about that now you're like, oh, that was silly for me to even be worried about?
Right. I guess the influence of others, other peers. I was never afraid. We were always in a good, good neighborhood. But I was always afraid you'd be highly, influenced by your peers, and that would cause a conflict with the family. You probably were influenced, but not to a great extent.
Yeah, what do you attribute that to? And when you guys were worried about that, did that affect how you parented us, or messages that you gave us?
Yeah,
Given that concern,
perhaps we watched over you. I had a different upbringing than Charlie. He came from a big family, so he said, "Let them be. They're going to be okay." But because I grew up in a similar type atmosphere that you guys grew up, I wasn't influenced by others. Materialism was always on my mind, so I didn't want you guys to think we didn't have what others have, and you would feel resentful.
we did a good job of that. And just for context here, so my mom grew up sort of, actually it's interesting, Mom. Like it's 1950s suburban Chicago. You guys are in the suburbs. Your siblings are named Jimmy and Judy. You're Jimmy, Judy, and Debbie. Boomer kids, etc. My father, born in Marrakesh, one of seven, would eventually live in Israel and come to America, and that's where you met. So I had two very, very different experiences growing up. Carol, your thoughts on things you were concerned about as a mom growing up, and things that turned out to actually be okay.
Well, I also was worried about the influence of others. I always felt that I wanted them to be in a good school where they would have good people around them. But then when I was teaching, I realized that it didn't matter where where they went to school. There were always negative things around, and I was just always worried that they might follow the negative rather than the positive, and that turned out to be nothing to worry about. But I also, and I guess it's probably a worry of people today, I was always worried about their safety, and just whether I didn't want them to get hurt. I was worried about like abductions and things like that. Just them not being safe, and that was something, and I realized I really didn't have to worry about it, but I just did. That was a big worry of mine. But they were, I was lucky. They were actually, good students, and I didn't have to worry about their school or anything like that. But I just, I did worry about their safety.
Agreed.
And and I just, maybe to an over extent, but I think people, I think actually today it might even be
Well, I was going to say,
worse.
you guys were
What?
raising and worried about safety in an era of no cell phones. I mean, literally, there was jokes about this on the internet now. But literally, Mom, like after school, I might go ride my bike somewhere, and you wouldn't know for hours where I am. You just kind of assume, oh, he might be with a friend, etc.
Right. You're right, but I was hands-on. I was much more aware. It wasn't like when I was in the 60s where I was riding all over the place, not telling my folks where I was, and they would say, "Come home before it gets dark." I think we were a little bit more watchful. As far as cell phones, I was thankful the cell phones came in, of course, as you were learning to drive. So I bugged you guys, asking you where you were. And if you wanted to answer, you answered, but eventually you came home.
Yeah, it's crazy because when you talk about the cell phones, before cell phones, it was call me as soon as you get to your friend's house. Call me, let me know where you are. And then it was the beepers.
Beepers.
They had the beepers in school, but it's I guess that was really my biggest fear. And to be quite honest, it's still a fear of mine now. I think that it's because of the way life is. For example, that a lot of districts where we live now on Long Island, they have total busing for elementary school children, and it's because of security. Where we live a block and a half away from the elementary school that Scott and Jill went to, and if they were going, and they used to walk to school. We used to walk with them, of course, until they got old. I don't remember, but anyhow, I used to drop you off because you stayed in school early because you went early because I was working.
I went early, and I went early because you were working, and there
Remember?
was a crew. There was a small crew of us who were there before the bell, before school started, who had working parents or two working parents. And it was so fun. We would do relay races. It was never one of those like, oh my God, we have to go to school early. It was great. Just when you talk about the guilt of working, which I know you don't have, but if you did, we had so much fun. But I remember walking home from school just by ourselves. When we were older, we walked home from school by ourselves. But we were a block away. I mean, we weren't far. It wasn't dangerous.
And right, and Scott was three grades ahead of you, so by the time you went, you were in first. He was in fourth, so so going home. But we used to drop you off before, and it just shows the difference at that time because we dropped those kids off, and they kind of hung out in the lobby. And they were basically unsupervised. They just, they were there. The teachers would be coming into school. Now, most schools have before and after school programs, that parents pay for so that they can drop the kids off when they go to work in the morning. So, that itself was so different. But today it's the security is a big issue with being a parent today, because as I said today, the kids that live on my block, they get bused to school and it's really because of security. They don't want kids walking alone. It's a shame. I think it's a sad commentary on society, but that's a whole other issue. But that was always a worry. As a matter of fact, I was been cleaning things out, and I actually found this big envelope, and it had Identi-Child, and it was your fingerprints and all things that about you, so that if you did get abducted, there was a way of a way that they could find you, or at least help find you. And that was you were definitely either in kindergarten or elementary school, but maybe even earlier. And I guess that's always a worry of kids. But that was my biggest worry. losing my sweet little children.
I still say that today.
Yeah,
I'll
it's
tell
true.
whenever we get off the phone or I text or if I hear something on the news, it's like I relate it. So we're always moms. I guess this is the takeaway. You're always a mom, and these kids are always in your heart. And thank God for the technology that they can answer back so quickly. But the worries, that's part of being a mom.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and how nice is it that we can all be together? The good thing of technology.
Yeah. We have to remember that.
So several people have asked, just given that we're both journalists and we host this podcast, when our parents saw an interest in news. Someone said, are there video clips of you as children doing fake broadcasts? I will say this. We didn't have a camera, but we have audio. There's cassette tapes. I don't know if we have a cassette tape player anymore, Mom, but we used to do fake radio shows, I think, in middle school.
That was with your friends, right? And the cassette that I found a few months ago, it had Mo News on it.
No way, really?
Apparently I called it.
Yeah, I think it was high school, so I kept it safe. It's somewhere in this house.
So if we can find a cassette player, we could find out what exactly I was calling Mo News in the mid-'90s, but apparently it existed at the time.
Right. But as far as Mosh, I'll take it, he was a toddler, probably 2.5, 3 years old, sitting with his grandma, who had the patience to show him the World Atlas. That was his favorite book. It was bigger than him, but they would sit and look at the World Atlas. And that's a fond memory. And taking him to the library, which we did probably a couple of times a week, he would try to find the nonfiction, which was kind of difficult in the juvenile section. But
that sounds right.
I was one of the few elementary kids that didn't want to read fiction. I just wanted to read nonfiction.
Right. He just wanted to go to the nonfiction. So he would probably pick up the books, return the books, wait until they were shelved, and then remove them again and take them home. But he was into that. But we read plenty of others, but his favorite was the nonfiction. So, and the famous story that you love to recite, Mosh, is being given a quarter to get an ice cream cone downstairs, but he would bring up the Daily News.
That's pretty amazing.
That's his favorite. That's his favorite.
Well, Jill, she was always, the little busybody. She had to know about everything and ask why and how, and always was telling what went on. She was always a detail person. I'll never forget my son and her, they would come off the bus from a camp, and I'd say to my son, how was camp? Good. What'd you do? And we had fun and run off. And I'd ask Jill, and she'd say, well, I got off the bus. I went to my locker. I opened it up. I took out my bathing suit. I changed into my bathing suit, and it gave me a blow by blow.
That's so cute.
And of course, when she was in elementary school, my husband and I were discussing it before. I actually have videos of her as a reporter. Several. Once with my son and sitting at a desk down in my den. I have another one where she was in the couch in the living room with another friend.
We still have them. With my friend Lindsay Kraft, who happens to be an actress in Los Angeles right now and a musician. And we joke because I'm the journalist and I was interviewing her, and I think she played Marla Maples. There was a whole skit where she was Marla Maples and my brother was Donald Trump. And I was interviewing them. I have it. It exists. I will find it.
Mosh, you will love it.
I mean, who knew how relevant that sketch would be, Jill, 30 years later?
Amazing relevant. It really is very, very interesting that's the characters they were playing. But Yeah, I knew with Jill, there was no question. She was fortunate they had a news after school thing. I don't even remember what it were, a news club in her elementary school, and she was part of that. But part of their after play activities was to make believe they were journalists, and we recorded them. So
I
here she is.
I have a fond memory that came up last night because I think Mosh was in fourth grade, and I remember him coming home, and he talked about school, and he had told me, he says, Mom, I'm so frustrated with my classmates. And I asked him what's going on. He said, these kids don't care. They don't know about the world outside. They don't know about the news. And this was in fourth grade, so I knew something greater was even on the horizon for him. But that he says, I just want people to know what's going on. And I said, most kids today, most parents, they just live in their own little world. And it's a great thing that you want to know about the outside world. I think that's what we try to teach them, that there is a big world outside where they grew up, and there's people who are, the unfortunates. There's war, and the fact I wanted them to learn about what others are going through rather than themselves. And their problems aren't as big as what other kids are going through. Empathy is the big word that I have to say that Moshe picked up especially. And I'm proud of him. And whenever he uses the word grateful and he shows what's going on, I fall back on what we try to teach the boys, that there's a big world out there and you have to feel for others.
I think that story, though, Mosh, that you came home in third grade or fourth grade and said you were frustrated that other kids didn't want to know what was going on. That's got to open up your memoir.
9-year-olds these days.
That's got to be the lead in your memoir.
When I was 9, I wanted to talk about what was on the network news, and just my fellow 9-year-olds didn't want to do that, and it very much frustrated me, as I told my mother. I was also, I remember this, for some reason, I remember wanting to get extra points in school from memorizing dates and facts. I was really into social studies.
Oh.
And the teachers are like, oh, it doesn't matter if you get the dates wrong. And it really upset me to my core because I thought it was very important to remember historical dates.
There you go. Little Mosh.
Little Mosh with the details. I think that's important.
Yeah, they did well. They did well.
So, but it sounds to me like, and I think this speaks to as moms are raising their kids, as parents are raising their kids, how much of it is innate, right? Is ensuring that recognizing the things your kids are interested in and ensuring they can be successful in that. And how much of that, because one of the questions we got was how did you instill news or journalism into your kids? It sounds like it was the opposite. Your kids came to you with their interests.
Well, I think it's important to nurture those interests and also let kids expose kids to enough things so that they can zero in and figure out what they want to do for themselves. And I think that a lot of it is innate. I think as far as being a news person and being, putting yourself out there to try to explain to other people what's going on in the world. I think that's something that comes from within, to be able to be able to want to express yourself to others and not be afraid to express yourself to others. That doesn't come easily to everyone. I think that has to be inborn to be able to speak to a crowd of people, not feel intimidated by that. I think that even as a teacher, you have to be a little bit of an actor to be a teacher, because you can't be afraid to get up in front of a classroom. And I know that a lot of teachers at first aren't, they don't realize that that's what they're going to have to do. They're kind of intimidated by standing up in front of a classroom of little kids, because I don't think that comes naturally to everyone. And I think it comes naturally to you. And I think it comes naturally, to both Mosh and to Jill. And I'm glad that I just felt like I didn't want to hold Jill back. If she wanted to do something, let her do it. And honestly, I knew that when she decided that she wanted to go into on-air journalism, that was that's a tough profession. And I didn't discourage that at all. We let her just go with it, and supported her, did whatever we had to do so that she could realize that dream, so to speak. And I think that it's great that she's doing something with her life that she loves. I think I just think that's what it's all about. What bothered me when I would listen to other people say, they hate their job and they can't wait till they retire. And I didn't feel like that, and I didn't want my children to feel like that. And if you have something you love and you could do that and make a living at it and do that as your lifetime profession, I think you're very fortunate. Not everybody could do that. So if that's your child's interest, I think nurture it, even if it's far-fetched. I'm an art teacher, so artists, that's a hard profession. And my mother discouraged me from being just an artist or a commercial artist, because when I first graduated from college, I worked in commercial art for a couple of years, and it was very tough. But I had also gotten my teaching license, because my mother, she encouraged me to do that. And so when I started in the city, and they appoint you and then you're on a list, et cetera, et cetera. So when I finally got called, it was a big decision to leave one and go to the other. And I wound up going, I just felt very influenced by my parents, and I did go into the teaching, and I did not like it at first at all. But eventually, when I found my niche, which was elementary art, I felt like I died and went to heaven. I just loved it so much, and to this day, I feel so lucky that I had a job for so many years that I really loved. And so I was loving it at the time that my children were already graduating high school and starting college and beyond. So I felt that if Jill had something she was passionate about, even if it was a hard profession to realize, I wanted to support her in every way I could. And this is the result.
Yeah, I agree. You said that beautifully. We watched Mosh. We had confidence with what he was doing, and we just supported him the best way we can. When he went off to college, I said, this is the best thing for him. I said, he's going to fly now. So we just waited, and we were amazed to see the accomplishments. And there isn't a day that goes by that we don't say how proud we are. And people don't have to remind us of that either. So the support, we were secure, and we listened when he had something to tell us, and he sought our guidance. I hope we provided enough for him, but the best is just to sit and wait and watch and know that your kid is going to be okay.
But what's interesting is that Mosh and I, and you talk about this from a young age, it was very clear that the two of us, this is what profession we were going to go into. And if we weren't going to do it to make money, we were interested in news and journalism, and this is what we want to do. And we both have siblings who this couldn't be further from what they want to do. And I think that as parents, at least right now, it's like we want our kids to be successful, and we're there's so much pressure on them to do this and do that and have a tutor and do this sport and this club and this, but it sounds like ultimately in this debate versus nature versus nurture, we are who we are, and it may not necessarily be influenced by anything that parents did.
You said
No,
it.
yes, I think so. And I think that, you and Moshe both should feel very fortunate that you're able to be engaged in a profession that you really love, and that you are able to do that every day. There are people that that have a love and they can't. I, I'm not going to name who, but I know someone who had a child that was an extremely talented musician, and he was through elementary school, high school. He was always he did these summer programs. He was like the first chair in Carnegie Hall when in the junior musicians. And when he went to college, he was extremely bright. Went to an Ivy League school, and then decided he wanted to transfer to a different school that was also a super school, but not considered an Ivy. And he wanted to transfer there because it had a super musician musical program, and his parents would not let him. And they said they wouldn't pay for college if he transferred. So he stayed where he was, and they said you could go as a summer visiting student, which he did. And when he graduated, and he had all kinds of physical problems due to stress, and he graduated, went into finance, has a great financial job. But he now in he's 50, and so for the past few years he's in a band, and he has his regular job, but he plays in a band. He works, he has gigs all over Long Island, etc., and that's his main love. But I think that he wasn't given the support that I think he deserved, and I think that he would not have had the physical problems that were caused by the stress that he had. And so I think you guys are very lucky that you have moms and dads.
I feel
But back to
Support
what
you.
just,
I feel
but
very
I'm
fortunate.
I appreciate that story, but I just want to get back to what I was asking, which was this difference between
Mom, try again. Carol, try again. That's the message here.
And I know who she's talking about, so it's like the whole thing. Anyway, I'm saying this as a mom again, who's like, it's stressful because you want your kids to be successful, and so-and-so's doing a STEM class and they have a tutor for this, and we need to get her into a music program or whatever it is. But it sounds like your kids are going to like what they like, and that's just something that's potentially in them. Or maybe I'm wrong.
No, I agree with you. No, I think it's something that is definitely in them, because you and Scott went in, your brother went in totally different directions, and you had the same SAT tutoring, you had the same education, and your choices were to do different things. He was more athletics, and it's just, it was a totally different kind of experience. And it was because of the things that you desired and that he desired, not what we wanted you to do. We let you do what you needed to do. Because I always felt like, even when it came to college, and I'm saying this because I think that it relates to what you're talking about, people, with the Ivy League and this and that and everything. I always just said, the most important thing is that you're happy in school. If you're not going to be happy, you're not going to stay in school. You're going to be miserable. You're going to transfer. You're going to, so you have to let your kids, you have to guide them. It's hard being a parent. You have to guide them, but you still want them to be happy. You don't want them to choose something that they're going to, you don't want them to fall off a cliff, but you want them to be successful and be happy and content in their life because of all the other, you start to think about all the other psychological things that go on, and you hear kids that get depressed, and those were things that were very concerning to your father and I, because we, you have friends, you hear things, and about we read things, and you know about all these instances with unhappy kids. They have unhappy lives, and sometimes they want to end their life. They want, it sounds dramatic, but it's not really that off scale when you think about your kid going away to school or doing something and they're not in your house anymore. You want them to be happy. You're not looking you're not looking at them every day and knowing that they're happy. So you don't want them into something
we're not getting
enjoy.
an answer to this question from my mom.
Yeah, I think, and we got a question about this, about fostering interest, right? Identifying what your kids are interested in and then creating opportunities or helping them to cultivate that.
Yes, I guess. And Moshe, I can't wait until you're a parent, because you're gonna look back at this conversation and you're gonna realize how hard we worked as mothers.
I give you an incredible amount of credit, and it goes to one of the questions that we got here from somebody who says, what advice would you give married moms to engage their husbands more in family stuff, in caretaking of the children? Is there anything that was useful in that? How do the roles and responsibilities go? And the question from one person is like advice for moms to get the dads more involved in things.
I think today it's a much better world that the mothers would want their husbands to share child care and take over at times, even if they don't do it the same way as the mom. I think it's important for the father to be able to fall in and parent their kids and take care and do the hard work and do the day-to-day type. Take them to daycare, pick them up from daycare, take them out to dinner. Now, this is something that Moshe's brother did last night, and he told me, he says, Mom, I don't know how Emily does this. I don't know how you did it. But I said, you'll find a way, and you'll do it with love, and your kids are going to know that you're the dad, but you know how to take care of me as well. And I can run to you for any reason and know that you will take good care of me the way Mom does.
Mom, you would agree we were, I think, unique in that my father is really involved with stuff, and I don't think you had to even encourage it necessarily.
No, I think I didn't. Daddy was before his time, because I think that today fathers actually do participate a lot more than they ever did, and I think that it's become a more accepted and natural thing for dads to be involved with their kids and take them places and do things with them, that the everyday type of things, just, like going out and bathing and feeding, changing kids. I think that it's more natural today for dads to do that than ever. And you were very lucky because your dad was very involved. We did not have to, that was not a struggle for us. And I think that having a father that's active in your life, and that relationship with a father is really super important. But No, I think that fathers are much more involved and now in everything. We look out the window and to the school bus every morning, and it literally is all fathers bringing their kids to the school bus. It's an amazing thing. We talk about it all the time because the fathers are there at 7:45 in the morning putting those kids on the bus.
I can
So,
appreciate the new mom. I can respect the new moms today, and appreciate and respect the new dads. I love to see how the dads are involved, their desire to be involved. It wasn't that way in our time, at least for me personally, because it's how you grew up. So my boys uh, and Mosh in the future will take on roles that he didn't see his dad set as an example. And that's okay too. That's okay too.
Well, part of, I mean, I think also part of like being raised and then deciding how you want to be as parents is also picking and choosing, right? From the buffet.
Of
Like,
course, either
I,
you're going to be like them or you're
yeah.
going to say it was okay, but I'm going to do it differently.
I heard it said to me recently that, you're forming your own identity. And so sometimes people have a tendency to want to replicate, for better or for worse, what they saw, but
Right.
recognizing that you have a choice in this life of, again, taking the best of, and then also diverging. And it took me, Carol, you mentioned your mom earlier, and on this Mother's Day, and we began the conversation with, when you guys think about Mother's Day, you think about your mothers. Lessons from your moms, good and bad.
well, my mother, she was very strong-minded and really tried to influence me in a lot of ways. As I said, with just going into being a teacher, which turned out in the long run to be a blessing and wonderful for me. But and and my mother, she was a great cook, and there were just a lot of things that she did that I really did not do as a parent. But my parents had 4 children. I have 2. And, so it was different. And you're right. You pick and choose. The one thing that I have to say, my parents were extremely loving and nurturing, and it's that unconditional love that you just, I think that's the thing that always stayed with me, the hugs and the kisses, and I felt like I could go to my mother for anything. That feeling that no matter what it was, I could go to my parents with it. I didn't have to hide anything, and I think that was the biggest lesson for me. And I hope that I instilled that to my kids, that confidence that no matter what it was, if it was bad or good, they could come to me with anything. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from my childhood is the unconditional love. And I think to me that's what life is all about.
I think you did instill that, at least with me, and I'm sure with Scott also, is that we did feel that way, that we didn't have to really hide anything. If there was a problem, we could tell you, and it wouldn't be the end of the world. And that is something that I am trying to do for my kids. I mean, obviously, the baby's too young at this point, but with Alex, I always try to say, I'm not going to be mad. Just tell me what's going on. We'll figure it out. You're not in trouble, etc. And I didn't realize that came from grandma, but it's a great lesson.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That makes me feel so good. That's why no matter what, whether it's the 1900 or 2051, it's all about unconditional love and confidence that you instill in your children.
Mom, lessons from Granny.
Growing up, I know how much I saw her work hard. She was a wonderful example as a wife who worked hard, and she took care of the house. She took care of the kids. She made a beautiful place for us to come home to, feel safe. Extremely protective. She was very watchful, so I felt at times that I couldn't tell her everything, but it worked out. It worked out. She wanted me to be educated. She wanted me to become a wife, a good mother, um, and just to love and protect my children, but also to be strong and to be confident as a woman and wife.
You guys kind of both grew up in the boomer age, and your parents were from a previous generation where they had been instilled certain things. I think officially it's either the greatest generation or the silent generation. I forget what they call it, depending on when they were born. And mom in particular, you were coming of age in the late 60s, early 70s, and the hippies, and all the various stages that were happening there. Were there things where you realized, like, oh, this is definitely something from a bygone era? When I'm a mother, this is not something I'll do necessarily. Ways in which you diverged from your mother.
One thing I heard in the house, and it's not the greatest thing to say, is, tell us the good news. Always bring home the good news. Don't always share what you feel that you have to keep quiet on, but just tell us the good news. And I felt in my heart that's not the way to be. I want the kids to come at any time and tell me whatever they had to say, not to hide any feelings, especially boys, because boys keep a lot inside. And I didn't want them to be afraid to talk.
And that's especially a lesson I got from my father, who also, like, very much is like, be a soldier, keep it inside. Things could be worse. Do you know how bad it was for me?
Right. And I always told the boys, you've got to think in terms of what he went through, and you've got to be in his shoes. But you've got to wear both pairs of shoes sometimes. You've got to know that there's a different side to things, and not to be afraid to show emotions. And I see that in my boys, that when they're happy, they show their emotions. When they're unhappy, again, they'll voice what's going on, and not be afraid to be angry at a person. You can still love them and show a soft side as well.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. I've learned a lot about young Jill. Teenage Jill in particular is interesting to me, and I think is worthy, Carol, of a separate podcast with great anecdotes. I mean, one of the the questions we keep getting, Jill, is like, favorite memory of young Mosh and Jill, favorite this, favorite that. Did you ever have to ground them? Like, people are very, it seems, some people are very interested in specific anecdotes of our youth. So I guess we could end there potentially, Jill, with Carol and Debby, which is, we've gone into some memories here. If there's anything else that comes to mind as we conclude here on this special edition of the podcast, favorite memories or parting thoughts, whoever wants to take it first.
Well, this isn't really a parting thought, but when you talk about an anecdote, we always wanted the kids to tell the truth and not, and be very honest with us. And I'll never forget, they weren't allowed to take cabs because we were nervous about them being in a. We didn't care. Like I said, safety was paramount. Number one, we didn't care how many times we had to drive them someplace. If we had to pick them up no matter what time or what, we would drive them. We did not want them taking cabs. And I'll never forget, Jill once took a cab with one of her friends, and I don't even remember exactly how it came out.
Because her younger brother told us.
Oh, that's right. Right. The younger brother told us and told their parents, and we got a phone call to come to her friend's house, and we're in the kitchen, and it seemed that her parents, the younger brother of her friend, told that Jill and her friend, took a cab, but it was okay. But they said it was okay because her friend took a knife from the kitchen, and it was had a kitchen
They had a
knife
weapon
in
on
the
them.
cab. The
No, she
two
took a butter knife, which is ridiculous.
a butter knife.
Butter knife.
So
Armed with a butter knife in a taxi cab.
had a butter knife, so the two of them are sitting in the back of the cab with a butter knife, and they thought that everything was okay until little brother. So yeah, that was something that we still talk about that today.
Since we were so positive, Mom, any negative
That's
Mosh
cute because
causing
something,
you trouble? Yes.
the only thing that came up was, what was it, sixth grade, seventh grade? I guess you hadn't finished a report. And you told me, Mom, I really need the day off tomorrow because I didn't complete my project. And I said, that's crazy. I'm not going to allow you to stay home. So a few hours later, I go into my room, and on my dresser are all the little toys that I had bought for Mosh through the years. He returned them to me because he was so angry about the fact that I wouldn't let him stay home and finish a project.
How did you feel? How did you feel about that strategy? Giving you back all the gifts you'd ever given.
I know it was. I laughed, and then I realized, like, you were really angry, and I should have listened. You know, I could have listened to you and said, "Yeah, it's okay. Stay home, finish your project, take a mental health day." But I didn't know about those days at that time.
They didn't exist back then.
Right, but it was just so funny because it was the little special things I bought. So I had to think about it much more than just what you were telling me. You were angry, but you gave it back to me big time. And the only thing I can tell about Mosh is, if your first of all, I want to thank all the viewers and support that you guys get. It's amazing. It's amazing. When I listen to you every day, watch your lives, I appreciate the support that you get from everybody and the love. But I'll tell your viewers, if they ask me about Mosh, I said he was the little 3-year-old who hardly said a word. He was late in his speech. And the fact that he had his brother call his friends up because Mosh at one time was very shy, probably similar to what I am today, but he was a shy little boy for quite a few years. And who would think that he's on his podcast every day and outgoing and
back when you had to, I love that. And now I remember this. You're like bringing up memories. When back in the day when you had to order pizza by phone, I was scared to call the pizza place.
Right.
To order pizza.
It's so interesting to hear that as a new mom, as a relatively new mom, because you think that your kids' personalities are set in stone, but they're really not. And you don't know it until they're much older, and you could look back and say something like, Mosh, you were too nervous to even call the pizza guy or whatever, or your friends, and look at you now. And I think that in some ways that's actually really comforting, because it feels like ultimately things will work out. You know, things work themselves out and you become who you're going to be. And for me, one of the things that I'm taking away from this conversation is that you both talked about, you know, right now I'm a mom, I'm struggling with motherhood in the year 2023 when we have smartphones and the internet and so many other challenges that didn't exist back when I was growing up. And to hear you guys talking about what you thought was the golden era, the 1950s. So here we talk about our childhood like that was, you know, the best time and easier days, less complicated, out till it was dark out and our parents didn't worry about us. But I think everybody has this longing and this feeling that it was easier before, it was simpler times, but ultimately we're all okay. You know, we all turn out okay regardless.
Right. Especially you guys. Have confidence. Things will be okay.
Absolutely.
As long as you want to be a good parent, that's very important. And let your kids be confident as a parent. be watchful, be loving, but give them room to grow, expose them to things that they're interested in, expose them to things that they may not be interested in at the time. But your kids are going to be okay. You'll be okay. Don't stress. There's just too much information out there, and we're always questioning ourselves. But sometimes sit back and say, I'm going to do the right thing because I love them, and I know that that's how it's always been. Being a good parent is worrying, and it doesn't stop.
It never stops.
It never stops.
So well said. I think that you have to, like you said, Deb, let your kids see and experience as much as they possibly can, but don't force them into things. Let them be happy. Let them speak their mind. Do the things they want to do, and as long as they have that unconditional love and feel like they're loved and supported by the people around them, their strong family, then things will work out, because life is continuously, it's evolving and changing, and things will always be a little bit different than they were years before. But I think basic motherhood and love, that's always really the same.
That hasn't changed.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. We wanted to do this because motherhood is so hard, I think, anyway. And especially what I was reading at the top, those headlines, it's just, I don't know if it's that there's, because of social media, everyone's just talking about motherhood and its challenges, or if it really is just that much harder. But, moms deserve to be celebrated. And we thought, what better way to do that than to bring our moms on?
So precious. As nervous as we were, or as nervous as I was.
Yes.
See, speaking of things that you were worried about that turned out not to be
right.
something to be worried
But
about.
I think, you talk about social media. We also had social media. We took you guys to preschool. We were at the school events, and you listened to what other parents were saying, what they were doing, how they were moving into other homes. So I think in each era there's a social media, but now it's just big time.
Yeah, it feels overwhelming. But I loved going on the positive note, on the optimism note, Mom, and people ask me a lot, like, how do you deal, and Jill, I think you get this too, like, you have so much negative news to deal with all the time. How do you remain optimistic? Well, you guys just heard my mom.
Yeah. It's what goes on in your own home. Don't be concerned about what happens outside, but it's really building a home of love, unconditional love, and having your kids come home and do their thing, and feeling safe.
Well, we're both so thankful to have such amazing mothers, and for your time today. Mom, I still need to figure out what decisions I'm making that you're not that you don't agree with.
Oh no.
That you're holding your tongue.
What drama have we created? Jill, let it go. Let it go. Carol is in full approval of your mothering. Okay.
Well, and I have to say, Mosh and Jill, and I'm sure your mother would feel the same way. Listening to you and Mosh every day, it's like sunshine in the morning, no matter what the weather is like. We're so proud of you. It's indescribable. You've made our dreams come true just by looking at the two of you on the screen, really.
Absolutely. It's my favorite part of the day, whether I listen first thing. I look forward to it, and it makes my day go by so. It's a wonderful feeling. I can put the phone in my back pocket, take a walk, and I've got you right there to listen to. I'm so thankful for that. Or I can watch you guys now. I do it on YouTube. I watch you on YouTube, and that makes my day.
My mom was one of the people requesting YouTube presence.
Mosh kept saying, the people are asking for YouTube. And I'm like, who? Who is asking for YouTube?
Among them is my mom. You met her, Debby.
On that note, a huge thank you to both of you so much for joining us on this podcast. For more importantly, for just being amazing mothers throughout our lives. We cannot say enough about both of you. And again, thank you guys for coming on.
Oh, we love you. Thank you for what you're doing for us. You're giving it right back.
Love you, Mom. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love you.